Now, what are biennials? I mean, first of all, let's put the biennials in some kind of context. The way I'm looking at the biennials is that they are kind of post-dictatorship events, usually placed in neoliberal economies, in the context of neoliberal economy, and in cities that want to face. If you put these three things together, you know what I mean. So what kind of biennials? In Istanbul, in our last dictatorship official was in 1980, September 12, and the biennial was thought about in 1985 when the democratic process had already begun and the neoliberal economy had already taken over. You can think of the Gwangju Biennial in Korea. In South Korea is the same thing because this just follows the democratic revolution. Especially Gwangju was the hotbed of the democratic revolution in South Korea. You can think of the short-lived Africa's Biennale or the Johannesburg Biennial, which was the first of which was in 95 and the second 97. So you can think of it as a post-apartheid normalization process where Johannesburg is no more a city not to be visited, but kind of a charming city. You can think of Manifesta, which is the European kind of the itinerant European biennial, which is supposed to, again, 1989 exhibition that purported at the beginning to connect east of Europe to west of Europe. And we can name a few others like that, even all the way to the Tirana Biennial, and that's what they do. Of course, when these things started, we did not really know what was happening, in the sense that our relationship to neoliberal economy, the curatorial relationship to the neoliberal economy was a bit differently constructed. Because the public, the publicum, as we know, it had evaporated in many of these places. And you would not want to work with governmental institutions or public institutions because of their involvement in repressive politics. So you basically fell on the lap of neoliberal economy, which was fine at the first, and because that got things going. But the other aspect of that was, of course, the city marketing. The city marketing issue is, you don't need to, I guess, to talk about that anymore, but which is, the cities are much more important than countries at the moment. These cities basically utilize the art world in a very particular way in a kind of a major competition between each other. And the city is not an abstract. The city is not an abstract thing. It's the economic forces of the city that moves the biennial. Brazil and Venice, etc., etc. Those used to be the major biennials before the 90s, and that was the national pavilion model, which was inherited from the early Venice model. And the early Venice model, of course, is telling you the sense that it's because Venice in the late 19th century was a city that was losing everything. It had no industry. Its qualities as a port had kind of evaporated. It was a backward town, and that was their way to the future, which happened to be a very successful future. And that the reinvention of Venice is through these the biennales and the festivals and whatnot as a tourist town. So what I tried to do was kind of a makeshift project. In the 80s, if you wanted to do an exhibition outside the centers, you had to work with places like the British Council, the Goethe Institute, the AFA, the this, the that, basically the European funding structures and some of and the American US funding structures. So in the old days, they dictated you what you should do because they knew better as Western countries and you were an idiot from the East, so how could you be of the same quality, etc., with them? And that's what used to happen. So I tried to, I kind of dismantled that structure by kicking a lot of big Western countries out of the exhibition because I refused their ideas. So that was already, that was not revolutionary, but it was kind of harsh at the time. And then the next thing we did is we opened the exhibition for the first time to East Europe, which was not seen before in any kind of international exhibition in that sense. That Bulgaria, Romania, whatnot, and all of these countries were in the exhibition. I also tried to include Egypt and Bosnia, but that was not possible at that time. If you invite an artist who is well known, who has such little time on his hands, he has to do the next show in Lyon and the third show in Athens, the 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after, you cannot get serious attention from the artist, and you cannot invest in the artist in the way that they should be invested. So that doesn't work. So if you're going to commission, our solution was that, come to Istanbul for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever, as long as possible. Work in the city. We introduce you to, if you want, a sociologist, philosopher, scientist, mathematician, whatever is needed, whoever is needed, whoever you need to work with. And then we edit the work. We edit the work in the sense that we are the first audience as the curators of the work. We have sessions. We look at the work before it's completely finished. We look at the rough cuts if it's a video. We have another discussion, and then the work is gone. And then the work is finalized. Biennial as a method allows you to work with artists who are not necessarily well known. Not well known does not mean that they're not amazing. It just means that they're not well known. Not well known artists have more time in their hands, and that's what we need. And that's also the reason why we decided to work with a group of artists who were not internationally, in the press every other day. A lot of the projects were about urbanism, also contamination in the urban space. There were the Istanbul projects juxtaposed with not Istanbul projects. I took that to Taipei a little bit in 2008. I was there over nine times over a period of 8 years. So I spent a long time there. This is the Taipei Museum of Fine Arts. Unlike Istanbul, it is done in a museum. Unlike Istanbul, 7% of the city sees the exhibition, which is a miraculous number, I think, for any city. So in Taipei, it's the citizens who go to. Whereas in Istanbul, we don't have a press publica. It's a very complicated thing. I mean, maybe we are inventing with this biennial the notion of a publicum again, but the attendance by the locals are very low, and they don't see it as a necessity or as a tool, but they see it as a luxury, as a surplus, as something that can also be done away with should the time come, because the notion of public support and other things don't really exist there. So with the Taipei Museum of Fine Arts, it's a terrible, brutal building. It's the wrong building for, of course, a hot city and a typhoon city. You can see already why. So we basically try to contaminate the architecture. This is Minjagu turning one of the main windows of the institution to an apartment that you see a lot in Taiwan and other places. Graffiti-based artists would illegally do lots of graffiti around the institution. He was not permitted, and that's him. Big Brother in the exhibition, as he was installed, so we did not know who he was. And then we worked with Arista, an artist collective from Argentina. They are also in the current Istanbul biennial. So it's me and one of the Arista people, Federico. So that was we basically contaminated the whole entrance of the institution, so it was even kind of hard to go through them to ticketing and whatnot. And then outside the museum, it was turned into edible garden. I mean, that's not obviously a novel idea, but the notion here is that Taipei was a lake. and it will become a lake, and that's why the water level was 150 years ago, and that's where the water level will be. So the museum itself will be drowned unless there's a lot of gardening and planting and tree planting is made. So that was it was semi-educational project that also took over the entrance spaces of the museum. So I mean, it took a long time to see art.